Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
No
So,
problem.
we're just going to jump right into everything. And to anyone who is joining us for the first time, this is Before They Get Famous. I'm the host of this new digital show, and it is exactly what the title says. I'm bringing influencers and brands and services and companies to the masses and just kind of talking about their stories and just kind of trying to put these individuals out there into the ether so everybody else can learn a little bit more about them. So before we get into talking to our guest here, Rocky Parrish, um, I'm going to make sure that everyone likes and subscribe. This is going to be on the SnazzyTV YouTube channel. So you'll be able to watch it there. Rocky, I told you before that we do shout outs here on the show, and that's kind of one of the features of Before They Get Famous is just kind of, promoting and supporting other Black owned brands. And so I'm going to give mine real quick. I am shouting out today Black Girl Sunscreen. That is a company started by a young lady. Basically, it is exactly what it says. It's, giving you that beautiful glow for our melanated skin. Because I don't know if any of you are like me with your dark skin. Sometimes you use that sunscreen and just got you outside looking like a ghost. But Black Girl Sunscreen, it is the exact opposite. So you can get that beautiful glow, and that white cream just kind of blends right into your skin. So shout out to Black Girl Sunscreen. I just re-upped on mine because I'm in the Bay Area and the sun can be killer out here. And then the other one that I'm going to shout out real quick is We Buy Black. So, Rocky, I know you know about We Buy Black because I think I've seen you put them out there a couple times on your website.
Uh-huh.
And if you kind of, I don't know if I don't know how you could not know about We Buy Black. If you're anywhere on the internet, the gentleman who started that company, young gentleman, young brother by the name of Sharif Abdul Malik, it's a company that is much bigger than him. It is the one of the largest marketplaces for Black owned brands, and you can kind of go on there and pick up any product or service, for Black owned that are Black owned. So those are my shout outs. That's it for me. Rocky, you got any?
So um, I want to shout out all Black-owned businesses. And typically we try to every Sunday to tag those and put shine because I don't want to do one specific one because everyone, why you ain't pick me? But for me, I actually like to shine as many as possible because on Sunday, and we're going to do it again this Sunday at ROCKDEEP Global on Instagram. It's just because I believe firmly in reaching back and pulling forward. And we only have 30,000 followers, but it could help someone who has 10 or 20 or 100 followers or even 5,000 followers get some exposure. Because I do believe that no matter if you're a local or a global business like my own, you could benefit from other people slinging you forward and shouting you out. So everyone who gets tagged and tags themselves on Sunday on our Instagram, I'm shouting you all out because I believe, as I say, the proverbial table is big enough for us all to sit at and eat.
Definitely, definitely. And We Buy Black just apparently they just reached 1 million followers on IG. So
Yes, it did. Actually, I'm very, very familiar with We Buy Black, and unfortunately, they have been getting suppressed as we have on IG because of algorithms and a lot of other pro Black IG accounts, and it's just unfortunate that we have to go through these types of things. But if we all work together to beat those algorithms and suppression, we can still succeed and push forward.
and definitely, definitely. All right, so Rocky, let's get into you and your brand, and I just kind of love it. Every time I see you anywhere around, you are always repping your city and your hometown. I see you got your Maryland flag, and you're always repping your own brand. So I love that. You are in the DMV, so for those who don't know,
Yes.
that's the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. My adopted city, because I'm from New York, but I moved to the DMV area some years ago for school. But let's when I started kind of researching your background, what and I think I told you this when we spoke before, I kind of see you as a Renaissance man, and I say that, and I hope you find that to be a compliment. It's definitely a compliment. I say that with all endearing terms, but just because I feel like you've done so much right? And there's so much, I feel like, in terms of that term Renaissance man, meaning, a man who can do all things, if he wills them to be,
Yeah.
right? And so for what I know about you, because I know you're going to get into this a little bit more, but this is what I know. I know that you've been in the radio industry. You've had a radio show. You're kind of a celebrity out there in the DMV. And you worked at Nike and Jordan at some point, right? You also had a career in government. So when you take each of those, anybody can say any of those could have been a career.
Yes.
Right? Any of those could have been a career. So, but here you are now with your own shoe company, your own brand, and I'll let you kind of go from there. But how did you end up here? How did you end up? Why shoes? Why apparel? Why sneakers? How did you transition from all of those things to here?
So it began, my life began at sneakers. And when I say my life began, I don't mean at birth, but when you're little, when you're young, you can't afford things. Your parents only buy you what you need, not what you want. Back in the day, we used to call wearing anything from Kmart or Zare, if anyone remembers that, Bobos. And anything I got that I even thought could pass for anything that was nice, I would hold on dearly to, but they were still considered Bobos. And I used to call my Matt Andrews the MA100s, but they were still Bobos because, it was upside down Japanese looking.
Yeah. In New York, we called them rejects.
But for me, I won't even be a hypocrite and say, we as a people are conditioned to want what we can't have, Black people. And when we get it, we want so much of it, we just kind of, we spoil ourselves. And then that kind of leads to giving our kids more than they need. But for me, actually, footwear became a passion because, I just love, and it wasn't just Nike, it wasn't just Adidas, it was just footwear. And it had a lot to do with my childhood because I couldn't get, even with some of my cousins had and stuff like that, who, were older than me, had jobs that they could pay for these types of things. So for me, that's where it started, but I knew I had no outlet to get there, to do anything about it. I couldn't draw and anything like that. So when you say Renaissance, I refer to myself as a hustler, because for me, you had to just make a way. And I got all these things going on. So for me, you make a way when you're younger, and from flipping now and laters in high school or in elementary school to getting other people to flip now and laters for you in candy so that you could buy a comic book or shoes. That's where it all started, my entrepreneurial spirit, before I even knew that's what I was. I didn't know I was running a business back then. I was just hustling. I was just trying to do what it took. My father always said, if you want me to get them things, you're gonna be waiting a long time to get them. So you can go do like your sisters and brothers, which I had 4 sisters and a brother, and work at the commissary, and many of my cousins. And the commissary, if no one knows, is something that, my parents were both military. It was a base grocery store. And so we bagged basically for tips. And, you could make anywhere from $20 to $25 a day to $100 to $150 a day. And people would tip you anywhere from $1 per, trip to their car to $2 or $3, which you thought, woo, $3, that's something. Those things pile up.
Yeah.
But life took me into a different direction where, your parents say, hey, you need to get yourself a good government job. They had, after they got out of the military, they got government jobs. And that's what I did. I got into contracts, but I always immerse myself into whatever it is that I'm doing because I want to keep making that money. But at a point I realized I want to do something else because something else that needs to keep my attention. And it's not that I get bored quickly. I don't like sitting behind a desk unless it involves something that I'm passionate about.
Right.
So the government just wasn't where I was going to stay. And I realized I could get into project management and then later marketing and management consulting. And for me, those things brought me to where I am today, which is my passion, back to my passion, which is footwear, because I got really tired of making everyone else money. Yeah. And said, because I made good money as I got older, but I was making everyone else money. And I realized that if I did this, maybe, if I took a stab at this, it could become really something good. And for me, it could show others that it could be done by us.
Yes, and I can tell, that this is definitely your passion. I didn't, know you in those other areas of your life, but I can see, just based on what's behind you, it's like those are your babies, and it's like every time I see you on a live, you can tell that there's a lot of passion behind this. Um, so that transition. So let's talk about the industry a little bit, because I don't know if, and maybe some people do, but the industry that you are in, there are not a lot of us in the manufacturing business of sneakers and
No,
apparel. Although we are one of the,
comparatively,
I'm sorry.
comparatively, no, there are not a lot of us in the industry. Yeah.
Exactly, right. And so when I present you as a black owned sneaker brand, that is pretty significant when you look at the comparative numbers, you know. Um,
Hmm.
so how was that? Like, how was that getting into the industry? That's not something that a lot of people want to do. That a lot of us want to do because it seems so
So,
hard to break into that.
and this is, and I appreciate that question only because, you know, um, and I don't want to come off as snide when I say, we make too many excuses as a people not to do something, thinking that it can't be done. And my whole point in life is to prove, other than wanting to be a president because they don't get paid enough and they get shot at, that's not what I want to do. But I want to prove the otherwise, that things can be done. When I did television and radio, that wasn't something that I practiced on being. I didn't study to be. It was a happenstance. And me and a buddy of mine, we said, let's try it. And 6 months later, we went from podcasting to doing real television and radio. No one thought it would be possible. Literally, the person who told us, or who actually said, hey, you guys should probably think about doing this, he didn't think at first that it might happen after, we're doing it a while, but then he stuck with it like we did, because for me, giving up is not really an option.
Yeah.
Just like, charity is not an option, it's obligation. For me, you just gotta, if you're gonna do something, see it all the way through. That's why, people with ideas that don't follow through with it, and then they're like, man, I had that idea once. Well, it don't mean anything if you didn't follow through
Thing, right?
at
Exactly.
all. So for me, how I got into it was just actually immersing myself, thinking that just because I'd been in the industry before would be easy. It wasn't, but it was because I did enough research. I didn't think of things as walls and that would stop me. I thought of them as obstacles that I had to get around or go through. So when I say that I want to come off snide, I don't want to say that it was easy, because it's not.
Right.
But I didn't go through like racism to get to this point, to get to that point. But once I got to this point, you would see these types of things happening, because, a black owned business. Well, first, why has it got to be about being black owned? Well, that means you don't understand the importance of it.
Important.
You know what I mean? As a response, that doesn't, you don't know the legacy of why it, what we had to go through for me to be who I am. But once you get to this point and figuring out how you get to manufacture, not just reselling someone else's things, you got to put up with a lot of stuff, which is why I tell people, if someone else won't carry your brand, carry your own brand.
Right.
That's what I mean. That way, the benefits of that are, you're not sharing your profits with a retailer. But you got to find out, all of the different things that it takes, because you don't have a sales team, you don't have a marketing team, you don't have, a street team. You are all of that.
Right.
And so, and I always tell people, don't take on investors unless you absolutely need to. And I don't think you absolutely need to. You just take everything as a short-term loan and make sure you pay it back. Because I hate owing people.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's the answer for, what it took really to get to this point.
Okay. And can you explain a little bit about, so you're direct to consumer.
Correct.
You don't have your shoes. You do have your shoes in one retailer, which is Sports Zone, right? Is that still
Used to, but they closed down, which happened to a lot of independents, and that was another thing. Just kind of as a sidebar, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the urban, like Sports Zones and things, those mom and pop shops that really brought Nike to who they are today,
right?
Cut back. Nike last year years ago cut back from 40,000 to 40 accounts, carrying their high-end urban, like, Jordans, like the high-end Jordans and things of that nature, the hard to get stuff. And then recently they just announced that they're going to pull a lot of their accounts from a lot of their other 40 remaining big accounts from across the nation. So oddly enough, we have other people who are calling us because, so those folks are smart, the ones who are calling the independents.
Yes.
But the thing is, a lot of those people didn't think ahead, because you have to be able to pivot at any point. And some of those people didn't think, well, what if Nike pulls their stuff? What are we going to do?
Right.
Because that's a lot of our revenue and income.
Right.
But people don't think ahead but the thing is, it's a two-way street. Never rely on one person. Never put all your eggs in one basket. And that's the thing. So, I mean, there's a lot to it, as far as where the industry was and where it is now. But people should not worry if they have a plan A, B, and Z.
So I want to make sure we clarify for the audience real quick. So when you talk about accounts, because some people might not know what that means. So you're talking about a shoe retailer that sells Nike product. That would be considered an account. Okay. So
yes.
Did you ever, before you started manufacturing, did you ever consider just being a boutique store and just being like, a sneaker store, as opposed to having your own brand and designing your own shoes?
No, only because I knew from the Nike side that it took a lot to get a Nike account, and then they would basically inundate you with stuff that you couldn't sell. And so if you wanted to get to good Jordans, you had to take all the crappy stuff too. And that's what kind of put a lot of people out of business, because, you start, it's kind of gangster if you really think about it. Nike sells you, they say, hey, if you want these Jordan 30s, you got to take all this stuff that really don't move. And then you're forced to discount that stuff and raise the MSRP, which is the suggested retail price of the Jordan, just so you can almost break even. You'll pull a little ahead, but the thing is, a lot of these mom and pop businesses, they rely on these Jordan releases. They rely on these other high-end Nike releases to be able to, make money. But if you have a guy telling you, well, you have to buy this other stuff too, and then, hey, at the end of the month, you owe us this money. We don't care what you done sold and what you haven't.
Right.
Those people are put into really bad positions.
Right. And that stuff.
So for me, that's not something I ever wanted to do, because I knew that if I was going to have my own store, which we did, I was going to sell my own stuff. And, with COVID and everything happening, we closed down a lot of stuff, and it was kind of almost a blessing in disguise, other than, people not being able to work. But then of course you have, and I'll just be frank, people who, your own people who expect things. But, for me, I think I've told you, and I've told many before, it used to be all about me, but providing jobs to other people is my greatest feeling. But you can't help everybody. And that's the unfortunate part. But, you keep pushing on, because you can't let a segment of your own people hold you back from helping the rest of your people.
Right. And that's what I think what I love most, Rocky, about your story and your vision. So when you go to your website, it's not just, and this is important for the audience to know, this is not just a guy who just happens to be selling sneakers. You have a lot of intentional, educational things, and like some of the stories behind your shoes. And we'll get into that as well when we actually talk about your product. But I do love that. It's like you have this, idea of community and creating something, just like, brother Malik, creating something bigger than yourself that, will sustain, the community. And so I do love that about the ROCKDEEP brand, aside from the fact that you just have some really awesome products.
And for me, I believe it's important not to just, big corporations will say that they're telling a story behind a design or a shoe, but you're really just getting the marketing version. So for me, I consider myself the culture unfiltered, meaning you're just getting it raw and with no one else telling you how else it should be done. This is how it really is. And, just for the fact of, and I know we'll talk more about product later, being able to say, let's remove ROCKDEEP from the equation. You're now about to find out about our culture without even realizing it. So that when you hear about, an African tribe or a king or something, you have people all over the world who are going to be saying those names and look like, who is that? And finding out whether they want to or not. But that product will have brought them to that point of knowledge.
Right. That's genius. I mean, you could name your product anything, You know what I mean? And the fact that
Mhm.
you are actually using your brand as educational moments, to me is just, absolutely amazing. So I appreciate that. And very exciting, and it resonates with me because I handpick everyone that I have on this show, and the story has to mean something. It has to mean something to me, and I feel like it, has to mean something to the community at large as well. And I think your story does that. So I don't know if we should talk about your product first or talk about some of the challenges that you face kind of well, let's talk about your product first.
Mhm.
So let me just go ahead and, okay. So just so everybody knows, I actually did purchase a pair because I didn't want to be that journalist that was just like, oh, you got nice shoes on your website. So I actually did buy the can, which I really, really like. I love it. I love the colors. I love the styling. This shoe is just awesome. And there's a lot of thought. I'm sorry, sun is kind of shifting now. A lot of thought put into the design, and we'll talk about that kind of a little bit. You've got some reflections, and you've got, well, one of the things I love most about this shoe is that you've got this high tongue here,
Mhm.
which kind of feels like a hiker, but it's that's the thing I think for me with a lot of sneakers is you have that low tongue, but this kind of covers that whole part of your foot. So anyway, love the shoe.
And you
There's
know what? You're the very first person who actually has made a public comment to that point, because although that's a running shoe, it's a running, hiking, trail type of shoe. Meaning you can run on the street, you can run on the trail. But the thing is, let's just say rocks jump up on you. And this is a functional aspect. That is a little harder of a tongue, but yet soft enough where it isn't rubbing against you. Where if rocks were to bounce up, they're going to come back off. They're not going to jump into your shoe.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely comfortable. I love them, and this color is everything. So I didn't tell you this, but I'm a former track runner. So I am all about a good sneaker, a good comfort fit. I was a sprinter back in the day. I don't sprint anymore, but so aside from that shoe, which I absolutely love, you just have some amazing designs
Thank you.
on your website. And I wanted to kind of get into your head. And I'm sorry, folks, I got to shift around because the sun
It's
is
okay.
bothering me. And every time I move, it moves with me.
It's following you.
Following me. So let's talk about your shoes. Like, first of all, how many designers do you have?
I have one in house, and I've recently have started reaching out to different folks to do collaborations because, which will bring us basically to another part of the story. But I believe in designers getting equity in what they do. Usually, if you work for a big company, you're lost in the sauce. You know, people, if they really research, they can find out who designed a shoe at Nike or Adidas or whatever.
Right.
But generally, only certain people get notoriety. And you have to be in the game a long time before you get that, like a Tinker Hatfield or Aaron Cooper or something of that nature. But for me, but they are only getting their salary plus, a bonus at the end of the year, because that's how it works at the bigger spots. But for me, I wanted to change up not only for designers, but for if we were to do a collaboration, that every shoe sold, you got equity in that shoe. Meaning you sold 30,000 units, or we sold as a brand 30,000 units, you are getting a percentage of that. And it won't be what, Nike would cut a check for to Drake. Drake, I have no hate for Drake, but Drake, he will make all these shoes. He will, he'll wear all these different shoes, but he's not getting paid on the sales of all those shoes. They'll give him a repurposed shoe, meaning a shoe that's already in existence, put his logo on it, boom, hey, be happy Drake. Or DJ Khaled, hey, here's a color that you like on a Jordan that we already have. Go be happy. Here's a couple $1,000s.
Right.
For us, we rather people bet on themselves and invest in themselves and say, hey, as a small business, I'm not cutting you no $1 million or $100,000 or $1,000 check, but I will give you equity in anything that has your logo and or your input, meaning your design as a designer. And for that, if I ever leave this company, meaning when my kids take over and if they ever die, we have now then created a legacy, because my kids or whoever takes over the company will be sending that person's children in perpetuity forever a check if we ever put that shoe out again. However many sales it is, they'll always get it. And for me, that's why I say this is not just a footwear and apparel company. We want to let people know we're trying to teach financial literacy, generational wealth, and just create a legacy for yourself that's beyond, whatever money you save buying shoes from us, put that money into buying land, which is king. Save that money, put it towards your future. Those things are important to me because I always say it myself, and always have my social media manager say, which is why we do things like Sezzle and things like that. Spend responsibly. Right. And people like me shouldn't be telling people that, like, hey, if this is out of your price range, wait another time or something like that. That's not something a CEO should be telling people. I should be like, nah, brother, spend everything you got. Spend. But that would be hypocritical of me, which is why, just yesterday or the day before, we just had a release last night for a triple collab we did. Not to get off topic, but I actually did a live and I had to apologize because the price point was much higher than I was ever going to want something to be.
Oh, okay.
But in reality, people were like, man, that's lower than everybody else would charge or something like that. So, and while I was feeling guilty about it, because it's really a little bit outside my vision, people understood, hey, man, you're splitting these profits with other folks, but this is just a badass shoe. So we understand. And people are buying it. And the thing, but I always feel like, hey, if I'm going to go outside of something that I really visioned or planned on doing, I want to explain why, or just, like I did, apologize. Hey, I'm sorry, y'all. This is what it is, but this is why.
Right.
And no one else is going to do that.
Yeah. And that's a part of your vision with Rock Deep as well, was that making sure that you had a shoe that was a affordable price point. Correct. Right?
Yep.
Okay.
And for me, it was important because I didn't want to be a hypocrite growing up, not being able to afford the same shoes that I'm selling. Now, mind you, we do have to have a higher price points on some things just because out of competition, the way it costs, things of that nature. I always said, I take the hit, but at certain points, you can't take a hit because it costs so much to be able to produce something. But because of inflation and things of that nature, it's still within people's realm, which is why we offer things like Sezzle, where you can break your payments up into 4. It's like the new age layaway, because Lord knows I had to do layaway when I was younger.
Oh, yeah.
But this is that technological, but when you were young and did layaway, or your family had to, you were clowned for it. Like, oh, y'all poor. But now you're doing it's the cool thing. Man, I use Sezzle, or I use QuadPay or whatever. So things have changed.
And that's awesome that you even have that. That you even have that as an option.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is, you want to give everybody the option and the ability to obtain something that you create for the mere reason that, because I hate when, I see people say, man, I wish I had the money to do this, because I was that person. You know what I mean? And that's why, thank goodness my wife, she found these options, because she's my, she's non-technical, but she's my person who like operationally goes and finds these types of things for me. And the ability to give someone that option to obtain something that we have. I mean, it's great that they can get the shoe because they really want it. That's great. But for me, just giving them the option to obtain it, if that makes sense, is really what I'm happy about.
Yeah. Now, so you have your one store, right? You have one retail outlet. Are you open?
I had 4, but they're all currently, I want to say temporarily, some of them permanent, but I had 4 stores and they're all closed presently. But for me, like whenever we're able to open back up, we're probably going to go to a franchise model, only because I want to be able to give other Black folks an opportunity to have ownership in something like this, because we'll never take our company public. That's something I would never suggest for anyone else. And something I've even heard that from a billionaire, Marcus Lemonis. He just said, never do it. But for me, it's just giving other people the opportunity, just like building, apparel. And I know we'll talk about that later, apparel factories. But for me, I just want to be able to give people the opportunity to have ownership, regular everyday people.
Yeah. I know your one store, you had it in your home city, Delray in Virginia.
Yep, and I had one in my other home city of Oxon Hill. I had one in Oxon Hill, which was in, did we have 4 stores or 3? Oh, I'm sorry. Delray, Old Town, Alexandria, Oxon Hill, which is they call the National Harbor, but if they called it Oxon Hill there, white people probably wouldn't go. And of course, Springfield Mall. So yeah, I did have 4 locations.
Oh, okay. All right. And okay, so we're looking forward to hopefully getting those back open once all this COVID stuff is over. Okay. And I'm guessing you went with having those stores because you wanted to give people the ability to actually touch your products, or what was the reason behind that? Because you could have stayed online.
I won't even lie. Part of it was ego, just to say you had a store. But then it's, you want to create the story because, I grew up when I was, where my parents not even well-to-do when I was a child in Delray but it's become gentrified now. And then we later moved to Oxon Hill. But the story of, hey, being able to bring something back to where I grew up, to those places, was also important to me. And just giving people the opportunity to go in, touch and feel your product, you know what I mean? But I knew that as I created each store, I did not want those stores to be like Foot Lockers or Foot Actions, where it was, you would know where to walk to get a certain shoe. I wanted to carry slightly different product and give each store a different look, so that when you went in, you felt like you were going into a completely different Rock Deep store. And it was just because that way it doesn't get old. So, because you're all in the same area, and because we're Washington, D.C. and Virginia right there, all in Maryland, all right there together, you could actually reach each store within 20 minutes of each other.
Right.
But I didn't want anybody going in like, well, I feel like I was just here. No, it was I wanted each one to have its own boutique kind of feel.
Feel. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's exciting. I hope that I get a chance to get into one of your stores one of these days. And it's so crazy because I lived right there just before I moved here to the Bay Area. But I mean, in Old Town all the time, but just didn't know if you've been. So,
and people can go on our Instagram at Rock Deep Global and see our highlights to see what all of our different stores look like.
Yeah. Okay. So I heard you say once in an interview that you get inspiration, or that people should get inspiration from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And because somebody asked you the question, what inspires you? And you said everything. Right. And I love that idea, because when we're talking to my audience is an audience of creators, and they're creating anything under the sun, music and visual art, or TikTok, or whatever it is that you happen to be creating. Don't be limited in the things that inspire you. You don't, like, in other words, with you don't have to be inspired by other shoes.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, you can see something that you like, and we call it, DNA, meaning you might like some DNA from something, and you might borrow, because taking other people's ideas isn't something I want to do or ever intend on doing, but you like DNA. But for me, if you ever think about a music producer, if you've ever seen like YouTubes or videos of them hearing like raindrops or cars spinning, and then they actually make that into music. Yeah. For me, that's a live thing with everything, textures, car paint, and when you see like right now, you see the wires on my desk, or if my desk is messy, those are different things that inspire you to put, like, how can I make that work on a sneaker? It's not just about, which, we're going to be coming out with like crocodile stuff, but it's not just about animal patterns, which we do too, or things of that nature, but it's about literally everything.
Yeah, I love that. Concept. So I'm going to stick to the industry a little bit more, because I kind of wanted to get your take on this in terms of other brands, like, comparative brands, not necessarily in comparison to you, but let's talk about price point. So I saw some things on your website, and just in terms of doing all the research for this, I'm looking at these other sneaker brands, and, like, I guess designer shoemakers, and the prices for some of these. I mean, of course everybody knows that Jordans are pretty high priced, but I've seen at least one shoemaker that is selling shoes that don't look nearly as good as anything that I've seen on your website for as much as $300 and $400. Now, okay, so aside from the whole culture vulture thing, how is that possible? And why would someone price a shoe that high? And is that realistic? Like, who's buying that? Who's buying a shoe for $450?
So part of that is, and this I won't even attribute just to our culture, Black folks. We're just a part of it. But usually we're the ones who make things cool, correct? We're the ones who are the trendsetters.
For sure.
Everything starts with us, not just where we're from, but where we are.
Yes.
But people love, there's just something about high price points and scarcity that make people go wild and crazy. It's like a sneakerhead. You know, when you know a Jordan's coming out and you know it's only going to be so many of them made, it makes kids go stand in line. For adults, when you see something with a high price, you know everybody ain't gonna buy it. So you can go and say, look what I have. You know, just like, you know, red bottoms, blonde, you know, Manolos and all that kind. People, and I always say that, you know why people price it at that much? Because they can.
They can.
And because consumers let them get away with it. Boutiques are nothing but what I am, but boutiques. They just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to make this a high-end thing, and it may not be made with any more quality types of materials than I have, but yet they're going to say, hey, we're going to price it at this point. Why? Because sometimes when you price something that you could price one of my shoes, and I'll show you right now, because a lot of people thought it was. This shoe right here, if you put Prada, Fendi, Dolce & Gabbana on it, it would be a $900 shoe. I will not make this shoe more than $125. Why? Because I don't have to. Because I know that I can meet my expectations of a profit without busting people literally upside their heads and in their pockets. But others, they want that cachet, and people have this mindset of, you know, I got to have that because no one else is going to have it. Right. That means that's what a sneakerhead want. They want to be one of those few who has a release. I wish it weren't like that for so many folks, but you know, I mean, when it comes to high price points, and look, there are people in the industry who are independents who do it and get away with it. So, and I'd say, hey, go get that money. It's just something I can't personally do or want to do.
And I'm even seeing, you know, I have just started, you know, doing all this research because I knew that I was going to be talking to you, but I'm seeing folks coming out with sneakers that aren't even in the sneaker business, like Michael Kors. Michael Kors, why are you selling a sneaker? Like, really? I mean, I guess because they can, right? Because
and the thing is, when you get people, everyone needs shoes. At no point do people not need shoes. Our business, while we had to pivot a little bit when COVID happened, people started going outdoors. We sell hiking shoes. So then things took back off once everybody, everyone either stopped locking down themselves and got tired and just had to go outside and stop buying masks from us, and they just started buying shoes. But Michael Kors knows people are coming in there to buy Michael Kors, but they also know that their business is fledgling on other things. So, hey, why don't we put our name on a sneaker and see if that'll sell? But let's high price it so that people still think we have high-end cachet.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about your what you actually do have in your lineup of products. So you've got pretty much everything. You've got a huntsman line. You've got hikers. You've got sneakers. You've got apparel. You have this. I can't remember the name of it. You have this really cool hooded thing with these goggles, like a.
That's kind of well. I almost did that kind of in a funny way. My son Brock, he really loves it. But it was basically when COVID started, it was just to put a jacket on, because there used to be these things that kids would wear where it's a sweater you could zip up. But I was like, hey, I'm going to do something and call it the Black Manta after, one of the cartoon characters, and just say, hey, and we literally out of 100 or something that we made, we have like 5 left.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So your stuff is just, again, so unique. Just stuff that I've never seen anywhere else before, which is pretty darn cool. So your hunting line is different, right? I mean, is that something that you thought you would ever have as a part of your lineup?
So yes and no. So I didn't think I'd have a hunting line, but I always wanted to. And the way I explain it is, always wanted to create product that. And forgive my terminology, not really, but the most hoodest of Black guys. And when I say most hood, is like, my boys that I grew up with, hood dudes.
Right.
And the most redneckest of white guys would love the same product. That means I did my job. And that means you have literally, and when I say that, I mean the opposite, the extreme opposite spectrum. That's like having a radical left and a radical right, and not in policy terms, of types of people. And it only shows that we have more in common, that we have differences in life that people just don't realize. Years back, and you'll remember this, there were these jackets that came out of race car drivers, and brothers in the hood wore those like it was nobody's business. Yeah. But so did white boys in you know, in trailer parks, and I'm not making fun of when I say this, but in the farms. Why? Because they just like the style.
Like that. Yeah.
You know, most of the brothers in the hood didn't know who most of these race car drivers were, but I can tell you that some got interested because of that. And just imagine walking around the mall, not that you could now the same way, but you walk around the mall and you see just the polar opposite of yourself wearing exactly what you're wearing. It makes you either question yourself or think, wow, he thinks this what I'm wearing is cool. And the other thing dude's thinking, see, he like me. And it's kind of like that meme where you have Spider-Man pointing at each other. You know what I mean? Two different guys, but it's the same guy.
Yeah.
All sharing a commonality.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to do that with the Huntsman line, and that's kind of how they came. Because, you know, I didn't even realize as many Black people hunt as they do. It is a big industry, and I realized, you know, because that's kind of how I got started with my outdoor and hunting line, was going on the REI site and seeing that they made footwear and apparel at hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I'm like, I could do that for so much less. And that's kind of, you know, because I had to repurpose a lot of my athletic gear to do that. And those people started coming to me like, wow, you know, because, you know, who is this dude? You know, we don't know who this company is or whatever, but I always tell people, especially when I had the stores, do not push product. Let the product push itself. Once people, just get them to try it on. Once they do, it'll sell itself.
But I noticed that a lot of your stuff goes, and maybe make sure I'm saying this right, because you do pre-orders.
We do pre-orders, and that's kind of a new thing, and I won't even lie. I saw another independent. His name is Devlin Braswell, and he runs Saya Collective. And I saw and this guy, I mean, although I've been in the business for a long while, he admittedly has only been in it for a year, but he's been a customizer for years. And this is me giving shine to someone else. He sells out like that. And when I say like that, I mean, literally, when he puts shoes up, they sell out. We don't sell out that quickly. Because he's doing a more high-end luxury urban type of streetwear type of thing where we're doing more functional, athletic and things like that. And I know he's going to be developing to that, but just like we're kind of going into, you know, a little more high-end type stuff, but not in the hundreds of dollars. But for me, when you do pre-order, it gives you the opportunity to not have to use all your capital, which is when I mentor to other guys who want to have their own brand. I say, look, you have options. If you have money, which I'm pretty sure you don't have the type of money that it would take to buy all this at once, not assuming, but when you do a pre-order, it gives you that opportunity to get some of that money up front, put the rest in the bank. Because I always tell them, don't go spending that money. Use whatever you need for the product, put the rest to the side, and it gives you the opportunity to kind of get a leg up and get going instead of, you know, trying to get investors to get money. And then once you do make all that money, you owe everybody who you just borrowed money from back.
Right. So we talked a little bit about celebrity endorsements of shoes. Is that something that you would consider, and have you gone down that route of trying to look at celebrity endorsements?
So the biggest the collaboration we have right now with Daylight, he's a rapper who's done stuff with like like Drake and all kinds of folks, but he's his own, you know, person. He's a very different type of person, a metaphysical, if you will. He's a deep thinker, but he has a huge following. And for me, I want there to be a reason in the story. And it was funny because I usually reach out to the people I want to do collaborations with. He actually reached out to us by he's really into Mansa Musa, who was the richest Black man ever to ever live.
Yes.
And that was something that, you know, he's been working on a record, an album with that he's coming out in December. And he reached out to us. And when he talked to my social media manager, she was like, well, our boss doesn't really do collabs. And he was like, oh, and she says, but you can reach out to him. But she knew who he was. She said, but you should reach out to him anyway. So I thought she was joking when I talked to her. And then I went and looked at the thing, and he did reach out. So we had a conversation. We connected. We were, you know, because I'm big into our history, not starting here in America and letting people know that. And people need to, you know, you'd be surprised about how many people don't know who Mansa Musa is. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that Mansa Musa was not the first of his kind, and that the person that was the first of his kind actually came to America, and there's proof of that. But people don't know these stories. Right. So when we connected, to your point, he is the first person of that type to do that. But when it comes to celebrity, like I said earlier, I'm never going to cut anyone a check. And for me, if you believe in yourself, like LeBron. I have the utmost respect for him and his team. But just imagine if LeBron did his own thing independently. He wouldn't get $1 billion check from Nike. He'd get a multi-billion-dollar check from himself from doing a collaboration or doing his own. Why? Because people want something that LeBron has worn. Yeah, Nike is cool. Nike makes it look good, but it's LeBron is the product. And this is what I tell other people.
I'm sure a lot of these, like LeBrons and the other athletes that we can think of that have done endorsements. I mean, a lot of these guys are smart guys, and they have pretty smart teams behind them. I'm sure they know. I'm sure LeBron knows that he could.
I disagree with that. Because a lot of these guys, and I'm gonna just be honest, there's only maybe 4 or 5 guys: Kyrie, KD, Kevin Durant. I forget one other, and LeBron and James Harden that have really big sneakers. They have teams. Everyone else who gets mini product contracts are only getting product contracts, meaning you get free stuff and maybe like $1, meaning because Nike has to pay you something. Now, guys who have like me, like Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'm saying his name wrong, but the Greek freak, his merchandise really doesn't move because he's a big man. That's what happens. But the thing is, a lot of kids coming out of college, they're from where we're from. And they just want that quick dollar. They're not thinking about the long game, the long term. And they don't have teams. Also, their agents are telling them, take this check. Why? Because that agent's getting some of it. So they're not always getting the right consultation and advice. And plus, most of, this is why you don't see our contemporaries, white folks, athletes, they barely even spend their sponsorship checks. You always hear stories of, Jeremy Shockey or now Gronk. They don't spend their checks because they just spend the endorsement deals they get, and they save their game checks. Why? Because they're used to living in a good life. Where us, we get some money, we gotta spend it.
Spend it. Wow. All right. So, Daylight, I have to check for him. I've got to check for him. He might be somebody I might want to have on the show.
Well, be prepared.
It sounds very organic. Your collaboration or potential collab with him sounds very organic, and I think.
Oh yeah, so we've already released 3 colorways, and last night we just released his 4th, which is the African Winter Solstice, and everyone loved. It's a gray and it's a blue that I can't even explain. We did it with another gentleman named Assis, who is the designer. It's a triple collab with me, him, and Assis, Daylight and Assis. And it's the one that's for $174.99, the release. And again, I wanted to, and Assis is actually Pakistani, but I wanted to be able to show people that you can put a designer on, you can put an athlete on, and if they believe in themselves, this is how the money will be made. And I wanted to make it so that people like Drake, people like, Rihanna, they looked at their brand and like, why y'all not doing this for me? Because the percentages that our guys get are way higher than those guys would ever get from those bigger companies. Why? Because the bigger companies ain't giving you money like that.
Yeah, they're not. No. All right. So let's talk about what's next for ROCKDEEP. Earlier when we had talked about this, idea that you had come up with regarding pledging or a pledge of a particular amount to. I want to make sure I'm saying it right. Underserved communities or the Black community, so talk a little bit about that.
So there's several things that I have in the pipeline, other than just franchising of the ROCKDEEP stores to have give people ownership. Yeah. We want to create. So the first thing is we want to create apparel factories in underserved communities. I'm from Vicksburg, Mississippi, that's where I was born, Vicksburg, Mississippi. But in pockets of PG County or just Detroit. Compton, there's just different places that don't have work. And instead of us begging the government or begging people to give us opportunities, let's create our own opportunities. And it's not to only build brand loyalty to ROCKDEEP, it's to provide people with jobs so that, because I mentor a lot to youth. I do public speaking to youth. And I always say a youth that we save today is one that won't rob us tomorrow. And that isn't a negative connotation. It's to say that, youth do bad things when they get bored and they grow up keeping doing bad things.
Bored and desperate.
Correct. And so when the youth don't have opportunities, desperation sets in. And, people are like, well, why did they do this? Well, you didn't live in these conditions. I was fortunate enough to not go down specific lines in my life that I could have that, maybe some of my cousins or friends did. And some of them kept me from that because it's like, nah, you got other plans. We ain't letting you do that. And and those people are still in my life today. And even though some of them are doing some of those things and some of them are, I don't, you can't save everybody, but you don't give up on everybody either. So, I mean, I ain't got to agree with a lot of what a lot of my childhood or adult friends may have done or may still do, but that doesn't mean I can't still try to help them in other capacities. And just like, communities, we need to stop. And I'm not saying that we as a collective unit do it, but, it just pains me when I hear people yelling and crying about diversity or inclusion. Like, stop asking and begging to be a part of something that no one wants you at. Go do it for yourself and have your own people. That way you can choose who's a part of what you're doing.
Right. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, I'm tired of begging for a seat at the table. It create your own table, right? And
Correct.
in this way you can determine who sits at it.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
And some people, get offended when I say that. Stop begging for inclusion and diversity. Create your own inclusion.
And I don't know why anybody would get offended by that. I mean, how long have we been begging? I mean, it's like, how long are you going to ask? I mean, at some point you have to. At some point you just got to, go for it and just say, you know what, I'm just tired of begging. I'm tired of asking to be included. And the whole idea of diversity, diversity inclusion. I get there's a movement now for a lot of organizations to, be more diverse. But to me, it almost seems like it's like they try to make it seem like it's rocket science. It's really hard.
The thing is, like, Black people just came in style. Like, first of all, don't ask us how to help your situation and not pay us for it. Don't act like, oh, well, we're going to throw all this money in the thing. Well, really, where's that money going? Because, when George Floyd died, rest his soul, we don't know where all these people say, oh, we're going to start doing that. Well, why didn't you do it before? Because I'm the person, where everybody says, well, just be happy to doing it. No. You need to ask the extra question. Why weren't they doing it before? Why is it taking now? Why are, Black at Nike? Why was that suppressed? Why did IG remove that entire page when people were saying, this is how Nike really is? I don't, for me, it's just like people need to look deeper into the surface of things.
Right.
And throwing money at a problem is not a solution.
Yeah, exactly. It's not.
So, and by the way, and to that point, and people getting upset and doubting and things of that nature, you asked, what are some of my other plans? And it was like, pledging to put $50,000 in the account of anyone that's under 18 that is Black, under the age of 18 that is Black. And we have our own plan of how we're going to do it and how we're going to get there. But you would be surprised at how many people doubted us and said, oh, you're just fake. That's a fake pledge. And I'm like, well, why are you worried about it? First of all, you're not 18 or younger. But second of all, if you're Black, don't doubt me. If you're white, hush up. I always try to tell people, like, I love our allies, but speak when spoken to, but leave that dialogue open, because I always tell Black folks, we will always need allies. We've always needed allies to get us out of situations, to get us into situations, whatever it may be. But we should always be ready to check them when they speak out of turn. And that's not me, because someone will say, oh, that's racist. You should. No, that's just me being upfront and candid. Like, you can't always, people can't always say what's on their mind. They just got to listen sometimes. And we have to do the same thing sometimes. You know what I mean? I'm told I don't have a filter, and I know, but that's just the way I was brought up. But I try my best not to offend people. I believe that sometimes when I offend people, it's because that's something personal that they're taking that they shouldn't. Mm-hmm. Just like when you make a post on Facebook and someone will inbox you like, hey, were you talking about me? And you're like, that's an internal thing.
Exactly. That's your what would make you think that?
Yeah, like, I don't even know you.
All right. So I think I might have reached our stopping point. Anything you want to add? Anything that I've not asked you? I love the fact that we talk about your product and kind of the industry a little bit. And little tidbits and challenges of pretty much what.
The only thing that I could add, and it's not even just about myself, but it's a common theme around just life. I mean, don't wait on other people to make something popular for you to want to buy it. Don't wait on, because the one thing that I had feared most was so many white people buying my stuff, and they would set the trend for my brand, which could almost collapse it with my own community. Because, but who wants to look at someone else that's not you, that's making the stuff, that, and the person who makes it is like you, and you're like, man, that's tight. Where you get it from? And then you find out it's a brother making it, you're like, damn. I want us to keep setting those trends, but I don't want to have to be, famous, or the brand be super famous before people really want to start. But that goes not even, like I said, not just for me, upstarts. That's how it becomes famous, because we support it, and we should support it unconditionally, just like customers, and I know most of the people who will probably watch this may be entrepreneurs, but I hope people who are just consumers realize, give us as Black entrepreneurs and Black businesses, remove the Black for a minute and give us the same opportunity to correct any issues or mistakes as you would any other brand. We already are behind the literal 8 ball, because that we know that if we have an issue, folks ain't coming back to us. But if Nike, Reebok, Maybelline, whatever, they could do something that you don't like, and you still giving them money.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's unfortunate, but it's we have to break these cycles of thought and conditioning that we've been taught, to think that this is where it's at, because it's, I don't even believe in the thing designer brands or name brands. I'm a name brand because it's my name. It's ROCKDEEP. Every brand is a brand to me, and ain't no one bigger or better than the other. Well, they might be bigger, but no, I don't even consider Nike my competition. My competition is looking me in the mirror for me to be better than I was the day before. And I wish our people collectively, and if people take umbrage with this and they think I'm talking about them, I probably am, but I want us collectively, because when kids walk by my store, Black kids, when the ones that walk by and take pride and walk in like, man, a Black dude did this, and they have pride, that fills me up.
Yeah.
But the Black kids who walk by like, man, that ain't Nike, that ain't Reebok, I don't blame the child. Yeah. I blame the parent.
That's a deeper lesson that needs to be had, or should have been had.
Correct.
If a child is saying it, I don't want to say it's probably too late, but that's.
Yeah, I mean, people always say it's never too late. I believe that's wrong, but I like to believe that people can always better themselves insightfully and educationally, and just have the conversation. Like, do you know what that dude probably went through to get to that point? And you talking about he ain't Nike and Reebok? Like, for me, now mind you, while the child who took pride fills me up, the child who didn't take pride, I really could care less, because that's more on their parents than it is on me. Because I'm really, I'm unaffected by those things. I feel more sorry for them than I do anything else.
And let me just touch on this real quick in terms of with the industry and you. So I did a little research. So there are 900 and some odd Foot Lockers in the United States. 3,000 or so globally. And that's just Foot Locker.
Yep.
That's not even talking about all the stuff that they carry.
And they own Foot Action, which means more stores.
And so when you look at it in terms of those numbers, and there's a lot more numbers that we could probably get into, and you know more than I do, but those numbers matter when you look at a company like you. You're just one brand. You're one, I don't know. To me, it's just overwhelming when you look at those numbers and when you look at what you are up against.
Yeah. In Springfield Mall, we were between a Foot Action, a Foot Locker, and a Kids Foot Locker. And people, and the landlords had asked, "Are you sure this is where?" I was like, "This is exactly where I want to be." Well, for 2 reasons. Why? To put pressure on them, but also people are going there and they're going to walk by me to get there, and they're going to turn back around to see what I'm all about.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Rocky, I don't want to take too much of your time, because I know you are a very, very busy man. You are the CEO and founder and creator and manufacturer of ROCKDEEP. I love that name, by the way. Rock Deep. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. And so thank you so much for giving me.
I appreciate you having me. I really, good luck to you and everything that you're doing for your passion as well. And I know that our paths will connect again in the future, if not near future. So I really appreciate what you're doing, not just for me, but for all of those like myself and others.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I wish you all the best of luck. I am going to put all of our social medias and as well as the shout outs that we gave in the description. So you'll be able to see all of that. I won't ask you that, Rocky, because you said, just Google me.
No.
Right?
Whatever you need from me, but I will tell people, send me whatever you have, because I like to put my full weight behind whoever is trying to help me. I am going to do the same for them unconditionally.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, man. It's been great talking to you. Thanks a lot.
You as well. You have a great one.
All right. Ciao.